Muller 7 on the leaderboard. Kazu 14.
Both in the top 16.
Right.
Good spot to be.
Yeah, it's the first round of the tournament for both players.
Yep.
Oh, is it the 1? No, Kazu gets him with the 6. We don't normally come in time for the die roll. Get that drama right there.
What a confident roll. Barely tweaks it out.
How do you feel about it when you roll a 3 and then I pick up your 2 dice and I just roll 1 die? Do you feel, am I rubbing it in?
Hey, if you care about the die roll that much, you know,
I
think somebody
it's a psych out play.
Somebody should try to rub you the wrong way. If you're invested in things like that, you deserve to feel bad.
I wear my heart on my sleeve. I just every swing, no matter how big it is, I'm feeling it.
What's the line? Luck is probability taken personally. Sometimes you lose
that's
die
a great
rolls.
Quote.
Yeah,
I've never heard of that.
That's not mine. I didn't come up with that right now. But,
that's great.
It is a good one.
So this is one of the matchups where Storm goes slow, and we've seen. I think the first time we saw Paul Muller win an Open with this, he had a great semifinal match where he was able to do this. Mm-hmm. The idea that Storm wants to combo as late in the game as possible.
Right.
And
against land drop is pretty important for the strategy.
Yeah, and against Jeskai, that means we might, instead of that turn 3 or 4 win, we might see Paul go for turn 7, a turn 8.
And especially because it's a Lightning Bolt, Lightning Helix matchup, you don't just want to expose Baral or Electromancer on the second turn of the game.
Yeah, well, Baral and Electromancer don't even matter too much in this matchup because Kazu has so much removal. They're going to die. I imagine when Paul sees them off something like Serum Visions, he'll scry them all to the bottom in favor of lands.
Right. If you have multiple rituals, if you get to a threshold where you say have 5 lands on the battlefield, you cast a Baral or Electromancer, then Kazu is going to be forced to do something if you start casting rituals.
Yep.
And you up the storm count a little bit because you get a Lightning Bolt out of Kazu's hand there.
Double top on the scry for Paul. Do you think in the dark with these players, Paul was on the play, does he know what Kazu's playing, would be your guess?
I think that these two players, they talk.
Okay.
You know, these are pretty regular players on the tournament. I wouldn't be surprised if he just knew from talking to Kazu.
Okay. And I guess he was on the draw, but it was a Scalding Tarn from Kazu, so it could have been a couple of decks.
Scalding Tarn opens up a lot of universes. I know that Kazu was playing this foil Jeskai deck at the Invitational. I assume Paul knew that.
Sure. On the line of snow-covered basics, which we saw from Todd Anderson, Paul Muller doing it too.
I've been told that sometimes you can gifts on Given and find 2 kinds of islands.
No one does that.
I've never seen it, but I've been told it can matter.
Paul's doing it. He's got 2-2 split.
I'm skeptical myself, but it's pretty free to do it.
Opt end step from Paul. So Ryan, what are the list of what are the cards that Kazu has that interact here?
You have those 2 main deck Spell Snares. Those are really good against rituals and mana creatures. Those 3 Logic Knot. These ones are pretty expensive and relatively easy for Muller to go off through, but Kazu has 4 Cryptic Command as well. Then you have your removal spells to fight over mana creatures, depending how the mana shakes up, what the texture of a turn looks like.
We'll see. Paul has an opportunity to do something here. End step, Kazu went for Field of Ruin. Now, Paul floated a mana in response. If he wanted to try to do something fancy like Ritual Gifts here, he has the mana for it. I based on how he plays the matchup, I'd be surprised, but he has a window.
If you're relatively confident that you can resolve your gifts, it's worth a ritual to do that. Especially because your combo turn in this matchup, as you're saying, it's not hinging on Baral Electromancer, it's hinging on Past in Flames. So having the ritual in your graveyard is just fine, as long as you have enough to go off later.
Yeah. Paul does not take the opportunity, lets Kazu untap lands. And now we'll see Search for Azcanta from Kazu. He's left up double blue. Paul will remand. I don't think Kazu in good faith can recast it here.
No, you don't want to tap low against a Storm Pilot, potentially going up to 4 mana off of lands alone.
I do like Search as a win, as the win con for Kazu, though, because Paul's going to just try to make land drops. If Kazu's going to get to a point where, say that Search resolves, then he just transforms it, says go, and starts finding more spell snares. I'm pretty into that.
Right. You, first of all, transform it to a land, so you can press a mana advantage. Second of all, the Search for Azcanta, it keeps the cards coming. You can just activate and Lightning Bolt on Paul's end steps, and eventually you'll reduce his life total to 0. You can invest very little mana at sorcery speed, if you invest any at all, and just kind of slowly take the game.
So the question now I have, Ryan, is it time? So Kazu has tapped down to 2 mana instead of 4. This is a window for Paul, especially if he doesn't have another remand. You know, he's not going to get Kazu much lower on mana, and he starts with Pyretic Ritual. This This is a really interesting start for Paul. Does Kazu fight? He's got a Logic Knot you see at the front of his hand.
Let's see. Generally, you only see Grape Shots as main deck win condition. I always like to check for Empty the Warrens. Nobody plays that anymore.
Kazu's going to tap out. He decides to fight over Logic Knot. And Paul passes the turn with no land drop.
No land drop is a good sign for Kazu.
And it's interesting that Paul doesn't have a land drop. Remember, Serum Visions scryed both to the top. That Opt was a scry to the top and draw. Paul had the ability to try to get more lands.
Yeah.
So his cards must still be good.
You do need to hit a certain threshold of rituals. It's hard to scry through things like Manamorphose, as you frequently want to have access to that. Though I will say on the previous turn, leading on Manamorphose would have made a lot of sense over the Pyretic Ritual.
Here is Search for Azcanta. Kazu passes with 3 up. He's got a Spell Snare at the front of his hand. Paul goes for Baral. Now, Kazu Spell Snares, and I'm actually okay with this on Paul's side.
It's going to make it tough for Paul to go for an actual combo on this turn because it was Spell Snare and not Lightning Bolt.
Yeah.
You diminish Paul's access to mana.
Yeah, but he got a premium counterspell. What would have really, I think, he wouldn't have liked is if, say, Kazu had untapped and Supreme Verdicted, or
well, it depends
something like Lightning Helix hit it.
It depends if Paul has a combo rolled up. It's actually very good that Kazu had Spell Snare. Against Paul's best hands, that's Kazu's best card. He wants to spend the Spell Snare there.
Okay. Kazu up to 6 lands in play. His graveyard's only at 3 cards because he had to delve for that Logic Knot. And now we see Paul going for a Noxious Revival. It looks like he's targeting Baral.
Upkeep storms at 1, I believe, is what we're doing.
That's the right time to do it. He'll draw the Chief of Compliance, recast it. Logic Knot and Cryptic Command both in Kazu's hand. And
being able to fight with 2 counterspells here.
Well, I'm saying,
really
does
good.
he have? Yeah, he does have 5 blue mana. He'd need 5 for both of them. So,
yeah, just basic planes for non-blue
Right.
sources there.
Right, I have to check there because that's a big ask of your mana to cast both those.
He's already been through the Field Rune. There's not a ton of non-blue sources, but they are in the deck.
And we're going to see Cryptic Command on Baral. Kazu looks like he's pulling ahead.
And
So-
the Logic Knot is tense because frequently in these matchups, it's very inviting if Muller has a remand to remand his own Baral.
Yeah.
But because Negri's at the ready with the Logic Knot, he just gets to win the counter war entirely.
Manamorphose in response. Now, I don't know if Kazu fights over this. I don't think so.
Right, you don't fight over that, and it also looks like Paul's trying to draw into the remand, which you do want to fight over.
Right. Now, the more he delves to Logic Knot, the farther away Azcanta gets.
Even the filtering every turn can be meaningful. He has stuff that he
Yeah.
wants to get through in this matchup. You know, the Path to Exiles, they don't really play. The Supreme Verdict, you can bin that. Probably don't want to be casting Teferi, depending how the hand shapes up.
What I like is that in this matchup, Kazu generally can't win with a Colonnade. It's just too much of a mana, too dangerous. He has to win with Lightning Bolts. So if he's going to do that, the card advantage that Azcanta brings is really important. What Paul is doing, lets his Baral get countered, now makes Goblin Electromancer. Will that earn a Logic Knot? We'll see.
It depends what Kazu's leftovers are. He's light on cards in hand. If you don't have a Lightning Bolt or a Lightning Helix, you probably have to go for a counterspell.
Yeah, I was thinking that too. Now, if you do have a removal spell, because Paul had tapped out this turn, I don't mind. Like I said, even if there was say there was a Supreme Verdict in Kazu's hand, a bad card, I would be really tempted to untap and Verdict to this Electromancer.
Yeah, and he'd still have Logic Knot backup with that line.
Yeah, and be like, hey, I could just converted this miserable card.
And you have to fight through some resources here. You know, Muller went down a card off the Noxious Revival. You got the counter draw off the Baral. So you're pulling ahead on resources, so it's probably true that the Logic Knot will be enough on the following turn.
Search for Azcanta, getting close. 6 cards now in Kazu's graveyard.
And he flipped past a Serum Visions, which strongly suggests that he has plans for his mana here.
Ooh, just says go, so no Verdict. Paul untaps, draws up to 5 in hand. Now we'll see if he can make a go. And, yeah, it's going to be time. Desperate Ritual starting out. Spell number 1. See, Kazu we know has a Logic Knot. It looks like he has a Snapcaster Mage as well.
Yeah, that has access to Spell Snare. You could also go for Cryptic Command, but that would turn you off of casting the Logic Knot in hand.
Yeah, he has just 7 mana instead of 8.
Snapcaster Spell Snare plus Logic Knot is a pretty good wall of defense against the Storm deck. Certainly in game 1, where you're not going to get hit by an Empty of the Warrens.
2 more. Oh, Desperate Ritual, splicing Desperate Ritual for Paul. And that might be an inviting time to attempt a Spell Snare, Ryan. Or was he splicing it? Actually, look, yeah.
The one thing that's tough about it, it still has CMC2, but then Paul just has Ritual left over. There's not a ton that you can fight over with Spell Snare, and it is a lot of mana.
Yeah. My issue would be if you let him resolve this, because it's so much mana, your Logic Knot actually starts becoming a bad card.
Right, you do have to make sure that Muller does not get out of range of casting Cast in Flames and actually just paying for
your Logic Knot?
however many cards you have in your graveyard.
Yeah, normally that's not a concern, but that's a lot of mana.
Yeah.
And he does go for the Snapcaster Spell Snare play. Paul will keep going. Remember, Snapcaster adds 2 Storm.
That is true.
Here is that 3rd Desperate Ritual.
Just 2 cards in hand for Muller, though.
Past in Flames. 2 mana up. The Logic Knot should have this covered. I assume he has to Logic Knot this, right? We can't let this happen.
No. You would have to be able to fight over multiple things from the point of it resolving to let it resolve, and that seems pointless.
With only 1 card left in Paul's hand, it's not like Kazu's fearing anything threatening here. And he will Logic Knot. 1 mana floating, 1 land untapped. Kazu has to pay at least X equals 3.
And Kazu did use all of his lands available and just take 1 card of the graveyard, keeps working towards that search for Azcanta transformation. Yeah,
well, he has 6. He should get it here. He has 6, and this should be 7 if he flips it over. Paul, out of cards, made a 2nd Goblin Electromancer.
That means that it's only 3 to flashback the Past in Flames, and there's a graveyard pretty full of rituals right now.
Yeah, Kazu has to find another counter spell.
This would be a great window for Supreme Verdict.
Yeah. Do you main phase your Azcanta activation to try to find it?
If I'm empty, probably, just because that's another card that I can hit.
It's so strange in this matchup to think I'm trying to find my Supreme Verdict.
Yeah, it probably doesn't come up too often.
He'll pass. 1 card in hand.
Now, if you just have a Cryptic Command, that means that
if
the
he already
Past in
has
Flames
it,
is a non-issue.
Yeah. Pyretic Ritual from Paul.
And this is going to be the last window for Paul.
Yeah.
You can't really keep fighting once Kazu's transformed to Search, starts activating Azcanta the Sunken Rune. Really easy to find counter spells, really easy to close the game.
Activate Azcanta. Now, if Kazu finds a Verdict here, I'm going to say missed opportunity.
I think there's a Serum Visions.
Serum Visions pass to exile 2 lands.
Yeah, even if a Serum Visions is the only hit.
It's still a sorcery.
That's an argument for main phasing it.
Yeah, it still feels like he should have main phased here. Now, might not have mattered. There's only 1 redraw at this point. He didn't find something great.
Maybe his last card is just good, too. I don't know.
The last card is the Cryptic.
Right.
None of this matters. Secure the Wastes. It wasn't Path to Exile, so it was Secure the Wastes. That's not going to be good enough.
No.
And Paul may have gotten it.
Well, we haven't seen a Gifts Ungiven yet, right? So we have a bunch of rituals. Yes, Serum Visions. There's some redraws for Muller.
Yeah, there's not that many mana There's no Manamorphose in there either. He just has a stack of red mana.
I think there's 1 Manamorphose. He baited when the Cryptic Command was on the stack.
Yeah, he's got to find... I mean, really, a Manamorphose would be good enough. Or he might even be at enough mana that a Grape Shot could get him there.
Kazu is at 13. There's been some Shockland activations.
Draw 2 Scries for Paul. Top, bottom. You don't want to see that if you're Kazu.
Top is concerning.
Now it's time for Manamorphose to make 2 blue. Draw that card that Paul scried to the top. And there's the last card in Kazu's hand was Spell Snare.
All right.
Wait. He can remand his own. It doesn't matter. It's still gone. He has Opt left though. Can draw that card he wanted.
Right. When you're flashing back a spell, remanding it is just a redraw. Because the spell is now templated where it's exiled if it would go anywhere.
Okay. You can't remand it back into your graveyard.
Right.
It's not It feels like that's how it should work, but it's not.
That would be mighty powerful.
Paul's still going for more rituals here. Up to Storm of 8. He can storm, it looks like in his graveyard, pretty high. Manamorphose, I imagine that's what he scried to the top.
That's
out of his
one
hand.
that you almost always want in this deck.
Yeah, now I see him separating the graveyard. The Manamorphose does not have flashback, is what he's showing.
From here, he gets some fancy redraws as he opens up the ability to cast some spell in the graveyard and then use the remand just to draw a card.
Noxious Revival putting Remand on top of his deck.
I think he's casting it and just remanding it because it's the worst spell and he's not going to be able to do anything with it.
So he's converting his Remand into a draw?
Right.
Yeah, that makes sense. If he finds a Grape Shot, he won't need to Noxious it here. It's already lethal. So he remands his Noxious Revival. Draws. Did he brick? Tapped land, and he just says go. He didn't find the win, Ryan, and that might just do it for Kazu. A shields down moment, and a big one at that for Kazu, but Paul cannot convert.
Right, and remember, Kazu did settle the wreckage of the SCGATL in the previous turn, so Kazu will be turning the corner pretty quickly from here.
Yeah, well, and on top of that, Paul just doesn't have much going on. Apologies there. As SCGATL finds Lightning Bolt for Negri. Wouldn't even mind just he bolts away another answer. Just a giant Secure the Waste on the end step there.
I like activating the SCGATL just because making sure you have a counter spell if Muller is able to pull something off.
Starts hitting with the Snapcaster.
Muller's graveyard's still reasonably stocked. You see there's still a couple rituals. There's a Manamorphose down there. And they do play 2 Past in Flames.
Now I like this from Kazu, the main phase as SCGATL. Path to Exile. No real need on that one.
Not ideal.
Says go. Lets Paul draw. And then he'll path during draw step, hoping to run Paul out of basics.
Yeah, just getting the Electromancer off the table. The Storm deck is pretty heavy on basics. Kazu knows that.
Yeah, it's got 5, I believe.
Yeah, something like that.
Yeah, Caleb's going to grab another, or Paul. Oh my goodness. Wrong Storm player.
Paul will get a island.
I'd say I've never seen them in the same place at the same time, but that's just not true. They're almost always in the same place at the same time.
It's just the family resemblance.
Yeah, they have become quite good friends off of their mutual appreciation for Storm.
Ryan, I get to check off Storm count of 8 on my bingo board right now. It's interesting because I'm not sure Paul will win, but
That's
Storm
true.
count of 8 did happen.
Yeah, I got countered off Cryptic Command while we're checking squares.
Baral recast by Paul, but he's still passing the turn. And now here's Secure the Waste. It's only for 4 from Kazu.
It still won't take long to close. If there's a removal spell available for the Brawl on the following turn, it's just a 2-turn clock.
Right.
Even without that, there's a lot of cards that make it easy to do it in 3.
Yeah, and with SCGATL going, you assume he'll find one of them. A Lightning Bolt or a Lightning Helix should be available.
Even Path to Exile, pretty reasonable from here.
So the tokens are there. We're figuring out a way to get them on the battlefield. There we go. Bolt on the Baral. Attack for 6, drops Paul to 6. Got one more shot. Will pass. Can Paul hit?
Only card you really have there is Past in Flames, and I think it's not even deterministic.
2 lands aren't going to do it. Kazu Negri takes game 1 with Jeskai control. That's a game that you don't always see them win here.
Yeah, the Spell Snare is definitely coming in clutch.
Yeah.
An underappreciated card in the modern format. I might
Do
be
you
a
have
little too
opinions
big
on this one?
I might be
Maybe.
I might be a little too big on it.
All right, let's go ahead and look at the sideboards. So on Paul's side, I've seen him play this one before, and he's got a pretty big sideboard for the matchup. 4 pieces of the puzzle and 2 Pyromancer Ascension are generally the backbone of what you see here.
Right. Yeah, the pieces of the puzzle, just another card advantage piece is really powerful. You can reach for Empty the Warrens and check Kazu on having a sweeper. This is the 3-color good stuff deck where the empty tends to be good the least often. So Kazu is likely to have access to engineered explosives in 3-game sets, and then Supreme Verdict likely sticking around as a one-of, or it's either there or it's not, but it is a problem if it is there. But empty is the easiest thing to squeak through a counterspell turn. The rest of the stuff doesn't really play. You don't really expect Jeskai to be attacking you with permanents, so the bounce spells don't really play.
You don't care about something like Echoing Truth? I mean, you just saw Secure the Wastes, but that doesn't matter.
Yeah, that's not where you want to be fighting. That's so deep in the game. You're the aggressor. Having an answer to Secure the Waste is just not at all where you want to be.
Well, just around the corner is Magic's next set. The core set is back, and it's core set 2019. It's been a year since we've seen one of these. But you can pre-order them now today from StarCityGames.com. They will not ship until July 13th, as that's when the set released. But you can get singles, foils, booster boxes, bundles, and more. And can actually just pre-order the singles, and they will be guaranteed over on our website. So find out that in our previews at StarCityGames.com/previews.
I want to get my hands on that new Nicol Bolas.
There's a card against Storm, Ryan. It's an amulet. Amulet of good against Storm.
Ugh.
I think that's what the text is. It's Amulet of anti-Storm.
Right. It's just actually worse against Storm than Damping Sphere is.
I think just to drive home the point that's good against Storm, you should have named like Amulet of Rainbows. Because, when a storm's over.
Oh, that's the end of a
also,
storm.
you got to have a great name for it. That's really a nice one.
I think that given how inelegant the design is in the first place, you should just call it like weather controlling device. Just like something that really hammers you. Just clubs you over the head. This is what this card does.
So, on Kazu's side with sideboarding, he's got some dead cards to get rid of. I don't think he wants Path to Exiles anymore. I'm pretty excited about Dispel. I'm excited about Negate. I like Vendilion Click. How much burn does he actually have to keep in here as he starts boarding in all these blue cards?
I think Lightning Helix is a little bit mofy. I at least want to shave on that, but Lightning Bolts definitely play. Just killing Electromancer and Brawl is really good. A card that's really good in the sideboard here is Ruined Halo, naming Grape Shot. That's something that maybe Muller does need to reach for a bounce spell if that's a plan that we're expecting to see happen here.
Do you think Engineered Explosives comes in just in case of Empty the Warrens?
I think it makes sense to have access to one kind of sweeper effect.
Okay.
You don't want to leave yourself just cold to it.
What about Disdainful Stroke? The only thing it counters is Past in Flames, but that's a pretty big thing to counter.
It counters Gifts Ungiven as well.
Okay, so with 2 copies, it's probably worth its time?
It hits some pretty big things, and those spells are so important that I am interested in it.
Yeah, a lot of great cards here. Now, if the Pyromancer Ascension plan is well known, we could see Celestial Purge, but that's pretty narrow.
Right. That's another spot where explosives can pay off, too.
So maybe you just start with explosives and then see what happens from there.
Yeah.
Both players keeping on 7 here for our second game. Remember, Paul's deck with access to pieces of the puzzle post-board really does change how the matchups play. No Electromancer, no Ascension. He'll just pass on 2 mana.
Don't want to get spell snared.
You can't play around 1 mana cards, though. Like, I've noticed that playing against Spell Snare. What am I going to wait until you tap out? Kazu's just not going to do it.
It's a good strategy.
That's why 1 mana cards, and especially 0 mana cards, are nice.
Yeah, casting spells that don't cost mana.
Like, how do I play around it? What? I wait till you don't have your mana up. It's not a thing.
You wait until you can cast multiple spells in a turn. You can tax Kazu's mana. One is not free. It is very cheap. Though I don't think that's what's happening. If there's an Electromancer or a Brawl, you're waiting because you want to be able to cast multiple spells in the turn in the first place, and you're pretty weak to Lightning Bolt.
Serum Visions from Kazu. Still has that mana up for a possible Spell Snare. Now on 3, we'll see Paul. Is it a mana creature? Is it an Ascension?
This mana looked like it might have been Brawl, but now we're looking at pieces.
I like this. If you want to talk about player on Spell Snare, Paul's play is great here. Top 5 gets 2 instants or sorceries, puts the rest in the graveyard, and you see that he was worried he was only going to get 1.
Yeah, just barely.
Yeah, there's that second card.
Serum Visions plus sleight of hand.
Yeah, 2 cantrips. He'll turn those into relevant cards later. Bins both his basic islands, so he no longer can do the snow-covered island gift split.
Oh, no.
Yeah, it's off the board.
That's so fundamental to his strategy. I don't know how he's going to recover.
Here's a sleight of hand that he'd found. We'll start with that. Picks up a grape shot with it. Here's the Serum Visions he found.
I'm not sure if I see a second land in Paul's hand, fourth land.
Well, he milled over 3 of them.
Yeah. You do want to make land drops in this matchup.
Giga Drowse and something else in those top 2. He's going to keep one of them on top of the deck. Giga Drowse is not bad here. Looks like he'll use a mana to cast another Serum Vision. So he'll draw the card he topped, and there's the land. I think they're both lands. But you're right, Ryan, that he doesn't have one this turn. That means he'll have to discard, I think, to pieces of the puzzle.
Yeah, this looks like it's an 8-card hand.
Both top, but yeah, moves to discard. Lands will resume next turn. So Vendilion Click on end step from Kazu. He doesn't know who he's targeting, though. Says, hold on. Yeah, and then he says, okay, I'm targeting Paul. 8-card hand is Giga Drowse, Baral, Grape Shot, Repeal, Baral, Wipe Away, 2 Desperate Rituals. So a lot of board cards here. We have two bounce spells, 2 mana creatures, a Giga Drowse, a Grape Shot, and 2 rituals.
This configuration looks like Muller is paying respect to those ruined halos. I will say a Vendilion Click is generally not super effective against an 8-card hand. There's just so many ways that the elements here can come together and assemble a combination. The Giga Drowse is probably the scariest card, and you wouldn't expect multiple copies of that.
It's the most unique here. It's the one that Kazu's hand might not be able to beat.
Right. It's the one that makes it so hard to fight a counter war.
I guess on Paul's side, we'll see him discard that second Baral.
Most likely.
And Giga Drowse, of course, has the ability to just tap out Kazu. Paul actually discards the Repeal. He keeps both Barals.
The redundant bounce spells, they don't do a ton. It is definitely true that Baral does just go to the graveyard really quick in this matchup, so having the backup can pay dividends.
Pass. Now Paul with 2 lands in hand, 1 off that click and 1 off the draw for the turn. And disguising that he's had a land, I don't think Kazu's buying it. He'll start with a Baral. Paul kept double topped on a Serum Visions. At least one of them has to be a land. Turns out both of them are.
Well, Kazu knows most of the hand. I mean, based off of what he knows, Paul's not on a combo turn here. So fighting over the second spell is probably good too.
So Paul will mini Grape Shot here, 1 and 1, or maybe double at the click. And then he'll play a tap land past the turn. I like how Paul's playing this.
Yeah, he's shaping up to fight a long game, which you kind of have to do in this matchup. And when you're making your land drops, then you're putting pressure now on Kazu to keep up his land drops and also have enough disruptive elements.
He'll keep pace. Kazu will just bolt down the Baral on end step. Back over to Negri. 5th land. Are we going to see a Teferi? We are going to see Teferi, Hero of Dominaria. This is the big turn. Kazu draws, untaps 2. If he can survive to the untap, he's in a great spot.
And he knows most of Muller's hands. He's leaving up either Logic Knot or Spell Snare here, at least representing those.
I like Kazu making this the turn. Here's Baral from Muller. Spell Snare from Negri. 1 more mana to work with.
And this is that second Baral that Negri knew about. Muller can't convert too much if this counterspell goes off, and if he fights over it, it means he's using most of his mana anyway.
Yeah.
He could have a remand, pick up that Baral, but he's not comboing from there. Doesn't have enough mana to even recast the Baral.
It's just not a great spot no matter which way you look at it for Paul Muller. If he lets it get countered and doesn't fight this turn, then he's going to have to win through a Teferi. It's 2 cards a turn for Kazu and his win condition.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's 2 cards a turn. It also generates a mana advantage. If Negri has some Serum Visions, starts looking for something specific, he can cast that, use the Teferi to draw the card he wants that turn that he left on top with the Serum Visions, and then just untap the mana.
So Paul is remanding his own Baral. And Ryan, if I'm in Kazu's spot, I'm fine with all this happening. Paul's tapped out. Yes, Paul got to 2-for-1 but Teferi's going to 2-for-1 him back.
You're fine with this exchange, but if Kazu has a Dispel, this is a good fight to pick.
Okay, and he does have the Dispel, so he'll just trade all the cards.
You just don't want to leave the Storm player with many cards in hand.
Yeah, I think, and you look at Kazu's hand, it's 2 Snapcaster Mages. If that's the case, I mean, yes, keep fighting. Get a Dispel in your graveyard. It's basically the same.
I mean, the remand on the Brawl is just a positive exchange for Muller.
Yeah.
If you can minimize positive exchanges, you pull further and further ahead.
No land 6 for Kazu, even after the Teferi. If he wants to just put a Snapcaster in play, or maybe you snap a Serum Visions, he can. I think he will. Remember, he'll get to untap 2 of these lands, so it's not a big cost. Top, bottom on the scry. We'll see if he picked up the land.
Yeah, there's some slight tension in casting Teferi in the matchup, but once you start untapping with it, you're just so far ahead. And especially because of the Vendilion click, Kazu knew most of what could have happened on the following turn.
Still no land for Kazu. We go back over to Muller. Kazu has 4 mana up, Snapcaster Mage in hand. Spell Snare and Dispel are his best options. Things are getting dangerous for Paul.
Yeah, Spell Snare makes it so Paul really can't set up with the mana creature. Just get to spell that before it comes down. Dispel makes it so Paul can't execute a Gifts on Given.
And it looks like we're going to see, during Kazu's draw step, Paul has an action. It's going to be Wipe Away on the Teferi. Kazu picks it up. Swings for 2. I don't know if he'll recast the Teferi. That's dicey here. Plays land 6.
Depends what he has for backup interaction. Obviously, leaving up more mana will temper Paul's plays.
Yeah.
But if all you have is a Snapcaster Dispel, shoving there is pretty reasonable.
Yeah, you'd hate to have it get remanded and then you lose.
Yeah. His hand is so full, though. He has to have multiple points of interaction.
Yeah, I agree. We see another Snapcaster Mage end step. He'll flash back Lightning Bolt.
That
all
is
to
a
11.
Strong showing of confidence.
Yeah, if you can use your Snapcaster Mages that way, that means that he believes he has extra controls, that he can get rid of one of them for more clock.
And on the table, this is a 3-turn clock. Any additional Lightning Bolt, Lightning Helix makes it 2. This one is looking like it's going Kazu's way.
Paul will get 2 more draws. Try to find something.
Yeah, for the Storm player, that Lightning Bolt either means, oh no, I'm very dead, or my opponent has made a mistake and maybe I can win from this.
Yeah, the attack puts Paul down to 7. So 1 more Lightning Bolt plus an attack next turn will be enough. Both players are aware of this. When we look at Kazu's hand, he's got a 3rd Snapcaster Mage, a Cryptic Command, and 7 mana total. So Cryptic, Snap, Dispel are up. I don't know that Paul will be able to get through that.
You also have the option, I guess there's no burn spell in the graveyard, so you can't like Cryptic to pick up a Snapcaster Mage or anything like that. But you can fight more wars.
Right. Yeah, I don't know if Kazu has a way to close on the next attack, but he may not need to. He has so much counter magic.
There's also a Path to Exile hanging out in that hand.
Sure.
Could answer a mana creature.
Pyromancer Ascension. This is the card out of the sideboard for Paul Muller. A very powerful card in the matchup, but it's shown up late to this game and may not end up mattering.
Given that Kazu, without a burn spell, does not have a win yet, it seems worth fighting over the Ascension. You can just Cryptic bounce it at the end step if you are concerned about it.
Grape Shot. Counter on Pyromancer Ascension. 1/1 targeting both Snapcaster Mages. And Ryan, I think this board state is why I might agree with you that I wouldn't have minded Snapcaster Spell Snare on the Ascension.
Yeah, the Snapcaster Lightning Bolt is extremely aggressive on the previous turn. If you still maintain that, Kazu has enough resources where it seems like he is still fine.
He's going to counter the Grape Shot targeting one Snapcaster Mage and bounce the other Snapcaster.
It looked like he bounced Drew, and now he can Snapcaster.
Oh, okay. So yeah, it was bounce draw. Apologies.
And use the Spell Snare on the Grape Shot on the other.
Okay, that explains. So bounce draw with the Cryptic, and then Snapcaster to protect the other one. A neat line there that Kazu found to protect his clock. He hits Paul down to 3.
That Cryptic command card is fancy. You can do a lot of stuff with it.
8th land for Negri. And it looks like Celestial Purge did come out of the board. It exiles the Ascension, and that makes sense as to why we didn't counter it. We already had it covered.
Yep.
Last turn for Paul. This should be it. And it looks like in the battle of our players, of our top 16 battle here in round 3, Kazu Negri may be coming out on top.
He's very far ahead and even has a game to give. Going for a Spliced Ritual here. Threatens to make 6 mana. It's the kind of thing that sets up for a Past in Flames, but Kazu can just sit back on his counter spells, wait for the actual Past in Flames to materialize.
Okay.
In order to fight through that, Muller would need enough mana to Past in Flames, flash back Past in Flames through a counter spell, and then still have mana left over to start casting rituals.
So looking at 11 mana, I think.
Yeah, right. He's just not at that threshold yet. He doesn't have enough cards in hand to really put him there. So he has the Past in Flames. There's a counter spell. It looks like Disdainful Stroke, and that's going to do it. Kazu Negri takes down the match 2-0 against Paul Muller.
Well, congratulations there. Jeskai Control coming out on top. This is one of those matchups, though, that very interesting from both sides. And